Hello everyone, if you don't know any TypeScript or have little to no experience in code blocks, this video is gonna help you learn the basics of TypeScript so you can start working on your project much sooner. And without any further thing to say, let's jump right in. This video is gonna be divided into two main sections. The first section we're gonna go over the different data types and how to declare variables, while the other section we're gonna go over the different operators we have access in TypeScript and if statements, and last how to declare functions. So to start, I'm gonna start by going over how you write comments. So you start by typing 2 / and then over here you can type the comment you want. Now let's discuss the 5 main data types you're gonna be using frequently. So the first one is gonna be a string. A string is basically a text, and you write that by just using 2 quotation marks. You can use double quotation marks or single quotation marks. It doesn't matter in TypeScript. So over here you can write text, and now that's how you wrote a text or a string. Now for the other data type, it's gonna be a number. It's self-explanatory. It can be any number. It can be a normal number. It can be a decimal. For the third data type, it's gonna be called Boolean. Boolean basically represents two states. It's either true or it's false. So false or true. And then for the last two data types, they're similar. You have undefined and you have null. Undefined, they're pretty similar and people sometimes confuse them together, but in simple terms, undefined means that it does not exist, while null represents a state of nothingness on purpose. You'll get more familiar with them as we go. Now let's move on to declaring variables. So variables, they're used to store these kind of data. So to declare a variable, we're gonna start by choosing if it's gonna be a constant or the variable value is gonna change in the future. So if it's gonna be a constant, we're gonna use the const keyword, and then you give the variable a variable name. So we're gonna call it my variable, and then you're gonna give it a value. So you're gonna write equal, and then we can set it to any data type that we learned today. I'm just gonna go with the number. So notice two things over here. First, I use a semicolon at the end. A semicolon is optional, but I strongly recommend that you use it. And second thing, notice how I write the variable name. The convention I used is called camel case convention. You start with a lowercase letter and each following word starts with an uppercase letter. This way you make your code more easy to read. Now let's try using the let keyword. So you let, and then you choose a variable name. So I'm gonna go with my new variable, and then I'm gonna set it to true, for example. Okay, and now we can test the difference between const and let. So if we try to update the let variable, so we can call or reference the variable by using its name, so my new variable, and now we can set it to false, and this works without any issues because we had the let keyword. But if we try to reference this one and set it to another number, what you'll see is that we're gonna get an error since we used the const keyword. So this is now a constant and we cannot change it. Now for this section, we're gonna start by going through the different kinds of operators you're gonna be mainly using in TypeScript. So the first one is gonna be arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators, they're basically the math functions you already use, so addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. And the second type of operators is comparison operators. Comparison operators is used mostly in if statements, and there are the greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. We have the is equal to. This is different than using 1 equal to. If you used 1 equal to, this is an assignment operator. It assigns a value to a variable. In this case, we're asking, it's a comparison operator, so if it's asking if this is equal to something else. And we have the is not equal to. That's if something is not equal to another thing. We have the and comparison operators, so if two things are true, then it's gonna return true. And we finally have the or operator. So these are mainly used in if statements. So let's learn the if statement and use these two. So to learn the if statements, I got multiple variables over here. And then to start writing an if statement, first we're gonna use the if keyword. So we're just gonna write if, and then we're gonna open two brackets, and then we're gonna have two parentheses over here. So the brackets over here, inside them we write an expression, and this expression, if it's true, we're gonna run the body of the if statement, which is gonna be inside these brackets. So if the expression is true, then we're gonna run any code written over here. And if this is false, we're just gonna ignore this piece of code over here. So let's try an example. So first, we're gonna see if the student is gonna get an A or not. So we're gonna check if his grade is greater than 90. If it's greater than 90, he's gonna receive an A. If not, he's not gonna receive an A. So we're gonna see if grade is greater or equal to 90. If this is true, in this case it's gonna be true since grade is 99. So if grade is greater than 90, then the student will receive an A. And if not, he's not gonna receive an A. So if we want this not to run, then we're gonna have to have a grade of an 89, for example, since it's below a 90. And anything below that, the student will not receive an A, and he's not gonna have a good day. Okay, now let's try a new example. We're gonna see if the student is gonna have a good overall grade this year. So to test that, the logic behind it, if the student is smart enough, he's gonna do good in his exams. So even if he doesn't finish all of his assignments, he's still gonna get a decent grade. And if the student finishes most of his assignments, but he's not so smart, he still has things to show up for this. So we're gonna see if the student finished his homework and if he is smart. So if he finished his homework and he is smart, okay, to test that we're gonna use the OR, we're gonna use the OR operator, the OR comparison operator. So if the student finished his homework or if he's smart, he's gonna receive a good overall grade. In this case, he's not smart, but he finished his homework. So since one of them is true and the other one is false, the OR operator is gonna result this expression to return true. So anything we write over here is gonna be run by TypeScript because one of them is true. And if we use the AND operator over here, for this to resolve into true, we're gonna have to have both of them to true. So if the student finished his homework but he's not smart, it's gonna return false. So anything over here is not gonna be run by TypeScript. And this is basically if statements and operators for this section. Now let's move on to functions. Functions are used to allow you to reuse the same piece of code again and again with different inputs. So you see what I mean in a bit. So to declare a function, you start by writing the function keyword. So you write function, and then you need to give the function a name so you can call it later. So for example, this function is gonna be called add two numbers. And notice how I use camel case to name this function. And then we're gonna put two brackets and then two parentheses. So over here, the brackets, you give it some inputs in the brackets, and inputs, they're called parameters. In programming, we call it parameters, we don't call them inputs. And in the parentheses, this is gonna be the body of the function. This is gonna be the code that's gonna be run by TypeScript. So for adding two numbers, we need to give it two numbers, obviously. So we're gonna give it number 1. Here's the syntax. Here's how we write it. So we're gonna write number 1, and then comma, we're gonna write number 2. And in TypeScript, we need to specify the type of this data. So as we learned above, we have various types, and in this case, we need to use a number. So to say to TypeScript that this is a number, we're gonna write a colon, and then you're gonna write number. So this says that number 1 is a type of number, and same thing for the other one. So number 2 is also type number. Okay, and over here at the end of the brackets, you can specify the return type. the return type is basically the data type it's gonna return. You're gonna see how we use that later. So in this case, after we calculate the sum of these two numbers, we're gonna return a number. We won't return anything like a string or something like that. So we're just gonna write colon, and then the return type is gonna be a number. Okay, as you see in this case, TypeScript gives us an error because we don't return anything, and we should return a number. So let's go and calculate that. So to return something, we just use the return keyword, so return, and then we need to return a number, for example 3. This way we don't have an error. But we're not going to return a 3, we're going to return the sum of both numbers. So to return the sum of both numbers, we can make a new variable, a new temporary variable. So const sum, okay, the sum variable, we're gonna give it a value. The value of it is gonna be number 1 plus number 2. So number 1 plus number 2 is the sum, and we've assigned this value to this variable called sum, and then we're gonna return sum. Okay, and this is basically a function. Now we can pass any two numbers, and then instead of having to write this every time, we can just call this function by its name, and we can pass in the two parameters, the two numbers, and it's gonna return the sum. So let's see how we use that. So to call this function, we're gonna start by using its name, so add two numbers, and then we're gonna open two brackets, and then we're gonna give it the first number, and then we're gonna give it the second number, and then we're gonna end with a semicolon. And that's all about it. That's everything you need to know about functions. You basically give it a list of parameters, and you can get stuff from it. It doesn't necessarily have to return stuff. Some of the functions might just print stuff to the console, they might do some calculation, or they might trigger something else. And that's how you call the function. Finally, let's make sure that our function works. So to test our function, we're basically gonna print the output of this function to the console in horizon words over here, down at the bottom. So let's go back to Visual Studio, and TypeScript has a built-in function that allows us to print stuff over there to the console. So let's start by writing console.log, and then we're gonna open two brackets and then end with a semicolon, and then in the brackets we're gonna call the add2 functions. And as you remember, the add2 functions, it returns a variable type of number or a data type of number. So we're gonna get a number at the end. So this is the number that's gonna be printed to the console. So we're gonna call the add2 numbers, and then the numbers that we're gonna add, there are 27 and 13. And then now let's comment this out so it doesn't run. Let's save, and let's go and see if this works. So let's clear and let's wait for it to compile, and as you see, we got 40 in the console, and this means that our function works without any issues. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you later.